Today, what if I told you that there was a single phone call between Trump and Putin? It could change the entire map of Europe. Just one call. It made Ukraine announce something that no one has dared to say since the beginning of this war. And now all eyes are turning toward the Budapest summit, the summit that may be the last chance to avoid the outbreak of a new world war. But the terrifying question today is, how will President Putin reach this summit in Hungary safely? This air route alone could ignite a devastating war between Russia and NATO. Today we will reveal exactly what happened between Trump and Putin in that secret call and why. Today, there is fear, and there is a lot of concern in Russia about Putin's upcoming trip to Hungary. Stay. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. Welcome to today's renewed meeting, God willing, from the series of opinion episodes. To begin our topic today, dear viewers, it starts with this phone call between Russian President Putin and his American counterpart Trump. Because now a number of American newspapers, including the Washington Post, have revealed exactly what was discussed in this phone call. These newspapers have exposed all the details of this phone call. So what did they say? Quoting senior officials inside America, they said that Putin demanded that Ukraine withdraw and completely give up all the territory now known as the Donetsk People's Republic, which speaks the Russian language. This is a basic condition for stopping the war in Ukraine. But Trump, after this phone call with Putin, held a meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky at the White House. And strangely, he did not ask Ukraine to withdraw from these territories, the Donetsk territories and so on, as Putin demanded. He asked Zelensky to stop at the current front lines wherever they were, he said, otherwise things would get more complicated. So Trump told Zelensky that's enough. Both sides of soldiers should return to their families and their countries. This war must stop. The strange thing is that this request is exactly what Zelensky has been waiting for. You see, Zelensky came out and said that Trump is absolutely right, that the war should stop at this point according to the current front line. He said that Trump is absolutely right because Ukraine is fighting a war with a superpower. So it's clear that America is trying as much as possible to find a compromise so that this war stops. Trump knew that Russia wants to control all of Donetsk people's territory. He knew that Putin is waiting for Ukraine to surrender, but he also knows very well that Ukraine will not surrender. So what is he offering here? He is offering a compromise, stopping the war at the current front line. What Russia currently controls will stay under its control, and what Ukraine controls will remain under Ukraine's control. Trump is waiting for Russia to make concessions. He expects Russia to make a concession in order to give up the idea of Ukraine withdrawing from these territories. What's strange is that Zelensky said it's a good idea, that the war really should stop, that Trump is right and so on, and that Russia is a great power. But at the same time, just yesterday he made a statement saying that Ukraine will never withdraw and will not give anything to Russia. He will only stop the war now according to the current front line, which means that after that he will return to this war again. But here we find that Russia completely rejects the idea of dividing the territory of this region, which throughout history has been Russian land. We're talking about the lands of Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia. Putin says it very clearly. When Ukrainian forces withdraw from these areas, and when Ukraine also announces its abandonment of the idea of joining NATO, these are the two conditions. Both of them, at that point we will issue an immediate order to cease fire and then start negotiations, meaning negotiations to end this war. So this means that even though Trump is looking for a compromise, the Russians are completely clear here. They don't want any compromise. Russia is very clear. This region must return to Russia completely. And here, pay close attention, there were referendums organized in Donbass and in Novorossiya meaning referendums that were monitored by 130 international observers from Italy, Germany, Latvia, and others, in other words, originally from Western countries. And the results were overwhelming in favor of Russia. More than 99% of the votes supported the region joining Russia. In the Donbas region, more than 98% of the votes as well. In the Luhansk People's Republic, more than 93%. Also in the Zaporizhzhia region, and more than 87% in the Kherson region. This means the overwhelming majority wants these regions to join Russia. So now Russia relies heavily on these referendums that took place in 2023. It says that it cannot give up even a single inch of these regions, because there is a popular desire for them to be Russian and not Ukrainian. It says all these historical Russian regions should be integrated, because this is in accordance with Russian laws, international norms, and so on. So Russia is sending a clear message, sending a message that Trump's plan to divide these regions is completely unacceptable to the Russians. And here we should pay close attention that the Russians in fact do not see these as Russian lands only according to the constitution or history or ethnicity or the language spoken and so on, but also because these areas that Russia is claiming today, which are still under Ukrainian control, are very important to it. They have important social, economic, and very significant strategic aspects for Russia. There are cities considered major industrial centers, very important industrial centers. There are cities that are among the largest heavy industry hubs. There are cities known for their mining industries. There is also coal. So Russia does not want to leave these productive areas to Ukraine, even if these industrial centers are destroyed. It believes that all these factories and so on can be restored, and thus production can be resumed quickly. There are also very important highways in the region, trade routes, railways. There are cities considered hubs for travelers, commercial transportation, and so on. Therefore, Russia wants these cities to be Russian and not Ukrainian because they also have a strategic significance. Also, there are cities that will pose a very significant social threat to areas under Russian control if they are not captured. Russia believes that in order to have social security in the areas it controls today, the rest of these cities and other centers in this region must also be annexed. Also, we cannot forget that there are cities and centers overlooking the Dnipro River. And everyone knows that when you have access to the river, it's not the same as the opposite. I mean, we're talking about a very significant strategic importance. When you have access to this river, the Russians can't give up the idea of having access to the Dnipro River, which leads to the capital. How? Even from a military perspective, this is very important for the Russians. Having access to this river means monitoring everything. It means gaining one of the most important guarantees to prevent Ukraine from establishing NATO military bases near the area. And it means monitoring all Western warships in the region. So Russia can never give up these important positive gains for Trump, because Trump wants a compromise. That's not possible. Russia is now victorious. Russia is waging a war and is in a very comfortable position, in the position of the winner, so it can't possibly accept or agree to a compromise. If it doesn't gain these remaining territories through a political agreement, it will gain them militarily, by military force, even if this war continues for more months or years. That doesn't matter. In the end, it will gain them. Therefore, it is believed that these goals must be achieved for Russia to be strong, so that such problems and threats to Russia do not return again. So imagine with me how complicated things are today in this matter. The phone call between Putin and Trump lasted for more than 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours of conversation between the two sides just over the phone. This shows how important and how complicated this matter is. One of the things that was agreed upon in this phone call is that the Hungarian capital will be the capital of the Magyars. Budapest is the place where the next summit on Ukraine will be held. After we saw the Alaska summit about 2 months ago and how Putin was received by Trump like a hero, today It is said that Hungarian Budapest will host the next summit. Starting today, warnings begin and preparations for this summit start. There will be initial meetings between the top advisors of Putin and Trump, and then the two leaders will meet there, maybe this week or next week, to end this conflict in Ukraine. But today, the idea of holding a bilateral summit in Hungary faces a very serious problem, a very serious logistical problem. Everyone is wondering how this issue will be overcome. When we talk about Hungary, we talk about the controversial prime minister of this country, Viktor Orban. We are talking about a friend of both, a friend of Trump and a friend of Putin. While he is considered an enemy within the European Union, or among those who control the circles of the European Union today, holding a summit in this country is something that in fact neither Putin nor Trump rejects, but the European Union does. But the problem is serious. The logistical issue at hand is, how will Putin reach this country? Hungary, as everyone knows, is surrounded by several countries that openly declare hostility toward Russia, between Hungary and Russia. We find a group of countries where it is impossible for Putin's plane to fly through their airspace safely. We're talking about Poland, we're talking about Ukraine, about Romania and Bulgaria. So to this day, no one knows the route that Putin's plane will take to Budapest. How will Putin get there? So the European Union here came out to clear itself, saying that it will not put any obstacles in the way of Putin's visit. He said that permission to fly over European airspace depends on each individual country, meaning Putin's plane will not get permission from the European Union, but will have to get permission from Poland, Romania, or any other country. Hypothetically, directly, that's how it is, each country individually. So, when the previous summit was in Alaska, things were very clear. A Russian plane flew from Russian airspace to American airspace without passing over a third country. Even the American fighter jets that received Putin's plane provided it with enough air cover to land safely in Alaska. But today, Putin has to pass over third countries, maybe even a group of countries, not just one country, and not just any countries. Countries that are members of the European Union, countries that are members of NATO, countries that openly declare hostility toward Russia. So here, according to all experts, there are three main routes for Putin. The first route is the closest, which is to fly over Belarus, one of Russia's friendly and partner countries, flying over Belarus with full protection from Russian fighter jets. Then entering Polish airspace, and then after that Slovakia and then Hungary. This route is considered very dangerous. I don't think Putin would trust Poland, which, as everyone knows, always comes out to say that there are drones and Russian planes that have violated its airspace and have been shot down, and so on. And Aiden is delighted that if this route is used, the Russian fighter jets will return to their bases as soon as Putin leaves Belarusian airspace, as soon as Putin enters Polish airspace. At that point, no one can guarantee what will happen next. There are parties that could target this plane to spark a world war, and there are parties that could target this plane in an attempt to drag Poland into this war. There is a very large intelligence operation going on inside Poland, so for Putin, it is almost impossible to trust this route. The second route is for this plane to fly from Moscow over Ukrainian airspace to reach Hungary in a very short time. The closest route. But of course, this is completely out of the question. I mean, it's almost impossible for this to happen. Ukraine is at war, it has missiles, it has planes and so on. The third route is a very long one, where the plane has to fly over the Black Sea, then through Turkish airspace, then Bulgaria, Serbia, and finally to Hungary. This route isn't safe either, but maybe we can say it's less dangerous, because it would only need to ensure security over Bulgaria. And this might be known, maybe it means intervention from America, maybe it means America provides security guarantees. Everyone knows that American fighter jets are deployed in the region, so these jets can secure the flight path, for example, over Bulgaria. But so far this route has not yet been confirmed or determined. Everyone in Russia wondered if this time the trip would be safe for Putin. Or are we perhaps going to witness a very dangerous scenario? A scenario similar to the ones that have always been the spark for previous world wars?